Welcome to the Free the Bear podcast, a podcast devoted to California independence, where two guys talk about how crappy the government is and how dumb politicians can be, and that there might be another way. So sit back, enjoy, and as always,
Free the bear. Grrr.
Hello.
Well, if it isn't the worst person to come on New Hampshire.
Ooh, Franklin Pierce, G.G. Allen, Adam Sandler, Seth Meyers.
Well, I'm not hearing nothing.
You can't hear me?
Hold on a second. I don't know what's going on here.
Maybe you're deaf.
Can you hear me now?
I've been hearing you the whole time.
Okay. I'm going to make some growling noises. Oh, no, I can hear you now. Yep. I don't know what was happening. I feel like it's your New Hampshire nonsense.
It was the microphone. It was definitely my microphone. I had to plug it in a little better.
You really, again, Bill, this is amateur hour. Again, like, how can I work in such an environment?
Oh, I get it.
It's ugly to me. It's nonsense. I just feel like, again, like, I feel gross.
You know, this is like a Democratic Party, like, Zoom meeting. It's just filled with errors and mistakes, and nothing can be done right.
You know who I completely blame is Buttigieg. I feel like, again, he built the app for us to talk on, and again, like, something's going wrong, and we don't know why. And again, we have no idea why possibly some kind of sabotage could happen. I have no idea why.
I think they should flip a coin.
But that's the best way. I mean, when you have a democracy, I mean, you just flip coins, right? I mean, because who cares in the end? You know, it's just like it's like a football kickoff. You know, it's just like, yeah, I don't give a flying. You know what?
You know, there was a point I thought Pete Buttigieg was going to win the nomination. I really did. I thought that they were going to coalesce around him. I thought Biden was finished, and I thought that they would pick him because he at least fought Sanders on the debate stage. Like, he went at Bernie Sanders. I think he was trying to prove to the establishment that he was worthy. I mean,
I think that was the case, actually. I think there was really a case that they were really kind of pushing for him, at least one faction of the elite. I mean, because, again, like, you know, he has weird kind of CIA connections. It is very strange that a person from, like, was it South Bend, Indiana, which I've been to, which is, like, you know, a kind of a nothing town. Like, I'm from Seal Beach, you know, California. Basically, I mean, I'm originally from Chicago, the suburbs and stuff like that. But Seal Beach is not really that special. South Bend is barely above that in my regard. And he got a hard push. He was on Ellen. He was, you know, doing a lot of stuff, and you know, his app was out there to tally the votes, and that's why he had that weird Iowa election night kind of stuff. But some reason he couldn't sell it, and I feel like in the end they're just like, okay, we'll just give it to the guy who's, you know, kind of barely functional, but at least he's on our side.
I always say this, Bernie Sanders people shouldn't went after Pete. They should have just finished Biden and went after Bloomberg, because there's stereotypes, but then there's data that backs up that Mayor Pete was not doing well with the African-American community.
Well, they didn't like him at all. And again, I have a few reasons why, but I think it's just that, you know, he would, you know, Joe Biden, whatever you want to say, again, like, he was the first vice president to, again, an African-American president. I think that was a lot more street cred than they actually realized. But there's other reasons too, that they were not backing Pete. And I just feel like they just felt that he was not really in any way, like, you know, even trying to reach out to the community. I don't think that ever happened with him.
No, it didn't. It did not. And yeah, he had a shady record. Same with Kamala Harris. I think a lot of the moderates just assumed the African-American vote was going to go to them. And it went, I think it begrudgingly went to Joe Biden. I don't think any of them were excited to do it.
No, Joe Biden was like kind of like the last choice for a lot of people, but like after a while, it's just like, yeah, okay, we'll just throw this to him. I mean, again, like, you know, he backed up Obama, and you know, he's Obama's VP, and that has some more weight than people realize.
it's interesting. If they could look, I wonder, as you as a Bernie supporter, if you could go back in time, would you have been a little less harsh on Elizabeth Warren, knowing that if you did, that she would be the nominee over Joe Biden? Or is there lack of a difference between the two of them to concern you?
I always thought that she was a snake in the grass, which is an overused term, but I felt like that, at any point that she was really ready to sell out everything. She stuck around for like the longest time to basically siphon off votes, even though she had no clear path to the nomination, which is, again, if she was a principal idealist, there's no reason why that should have happened. If you're a principal idealist and you realize, okay, Bernie and Joe are pretty much it at this point, and I want to make sure there's change in America, why am I sticking in the race past the point that everyone knew I had no chance? And again, I feel like, that whole BS situation she did where, like, remember she was like, Bernie Sanders told me that, again, there is no way in hell that a woman could ever be president of the United States. I don't think he ever said that. And if he did said that, there was a different nuance about this whole thing from the get-go. If he was saying something like that, it would be like, again, like he just, thought the country was being not ready, not because he's just, went out of his way to hate women, because, again, Bernie Sanders had a very strong record on that. So, again, she completely tried to attack him on that. She, that BS thing at the end of the one debates where she was trying to, like, say, like, why did you call me a liar? It's just like, that's not what happened. That's what he said. And so, like, again, I feel like, again, she was a stalking horse for the establishment. And, again, she'll get paid back in some way. I'm sure in the Joe Biden administration, all of a sudden we'll find out she's Secretary of the Treasury or some kind of cabinet position.
I think my guess with her would be HUD.
Yeah, again, HUD gets forgotten about a lot. HUD is a very important one, too, especially when it comes to a lot of stuff.
I think HUD is possible for her. Yeah, Secretary of Treasury, I know everyone else says, and that totally makes sense. My guess is HUD. My scary, like, Secretary of State, like, that could be Pete Buttigieg, the young, upcoming, smart McKinsey, former, veteran.
Right, which is pretty much like, let's just give the CIA control over the Secretary of State. But that's fantastic. I mean, like, again, the Biden thing, again, you probably read the article, like, I did for People's World where I was talking about the mask is off and, like, again, we should vote for Biden. But, like, when I say this, again, I say this in the same term as, like, Theo Slater said, which is basically, we're voting for someone who is going to give us chemo, or, again, like, we're going to stop the amputation of a lot of limbs.
Yeah, it's, no one will argue that the 4 years of Biden will be better than 4 years of Trump. I think we can all agree on that, but I don't think what at least what I look at is the 4 years after that are really concerning. Like, I think that there needed to be a strong progressive, idealistic to come in and, really but strengthen the base of the progressive movement.
Well, I don't think that would happen. I mean, like, I feel like Joe Biden, if he got in, there'll be such half measures that, like, I again, like, and I say this without hyperbole whatsoever, that he would be basically like the Hindenburg before Hitler. He would just be this old, doddering man who's, from a different time and place, who is over his head, and he can't make things happen. The country falls little by little, more and more, and at some point, I would totally expect, like, a midterm election with, like, a Joe Biden presidency, that you get some hard right, Congress would come up, and that they would basically put in a bunch of nonsense, and he's going to have to compromise with them, and then all of a sudden, like, he's just going to go out the window, and that's it. And again, like, we're just going to have, like, Trump without the dementia and craziness and corruption.
Well, so this is funny. My set agenda for tonight, I read the Transition Integrity Project. They're a 22-page study on likely election scenarios, and it was so just discouraging. I was like, I also have to bring up Hamburger America by George Motz, this book that I got that covers hamburgers in all the states in America. Some states are excluded that didn't have good hamburgers, but it's like, I'm going to
talking about hams,
Oh, they have steamed hams in there. Oh, that's a real thing. It's real.
But that's an Albany expression, right?
It is, although
But I'm
originally
from
from
Utica.
Connecticut. You are from Utica.
I'm from Utica. I never heard that one.
All right, so I'll ask you. I got to ask you before we get into this, just so I know, how close are you to LA itself, Los Angeles proper?
Los Angeles proper, probably about a good, on a good day, half hour. That's really kind of pushing it, but probably about a half hour, 40 minutes tops.
All right, have you been to the Apple Pan in Los Angeles?
No, because I don't like going to Los Angeles. But again, that's me being the outlier. Sorry.
They say they make a mighty good hamburger at the Apple Pan in Los Angeles.
I've never heard of that, but again, I assume so because LA is, there's a ton of foodie places around, and I'm sure it's pretty damn good. I mean, I had a camel burger at Beachwood Barbecue in Seal Beach and Long Beach. I don't even know they even make those anymore, but that's as far as I go.
How about you're close to Venice, I take it?
Well, no, not close. I mean, again, probably about 40, 45 minutes probably because, again, going to Venice is kind of a nightmare because, again, it might take you about 30 minutes to get anywhere close to it, but then, again, you're just going to be lurching along the freeways and then the side streets to actually get into it. That place is an overcrowded mess. I mean, that's a rat's nest.
All right, so then I will not recommend Hinano Cafe, but apparently they have a great ham. Yes. Oh,
You have Aurora Borealis in the back kitchen? Do you know?
They sure do.
Okay, but you get in this time and place?
Oh, yes, Superintendent Chalmers. So this transition integrity project, the 22-page report, is terrifying, wrapped in awfulness. In fact, a couple things that we should take from it, being glass half full, is all of a sudden the two people supporting California independence don't look as crazy as they did before this report.
No, I don't think so. Again, I would look at the same thing too. I mean, if you have the top bigwigs in the Democratic Party who are being Biden stand-ins, which is basically, that's basically Biden himself. This is basically, he has his own people go into this. And then you have, I think it was Bill Kristol and some other, David Frum was another name was thrown around.
Yes.
They're not Trump Republicans, but they're Republicans, and then they're wargaming basically as they're acting like Trump. And again, was it they had 4 scenarios, and one scenario was, yes, the West Coast actually leaves the Union. Oh,
so we'll start with that one because we're a California independence podcast. If Trump wins, they say in all these scenarios he loses the popular vote. But in this one, he loses the electoral vote. And here's some – I'll go into these after. But I'll tell you, if Trump wins, Biden, they think, will encourage California and Cascadia to secede in order to get compromises on electoral college being displaced or getting rid of it and making Puerto Rico and D.C. states.
That kind of makes sense. I mean, this is how many elections can the Democrats lose within the last 20 years because of the Electoral College nonsense? I mean, it's you got 2000, again, you got 2016, and then we're going to say 2020 again. It's just no, again, no one's going to put up with this kind of crap. And again, it's an antiquated situation. Again, this is something where the only reason that the Electoral College existed in the first place was because they thought that the common folk were so backwards and illiterate that they really couldn't be trusted with actually having the presidency with them. So I mean that all kind of rings kind of true. I mean,
I was wait a minute, maybe they were onto something.
Yeah, but I mean it's just again, but in no other country around the world actually does this kind of system. No other kind of developed Western democracy plays with this. There is no equivalent. Absolutely. Again, you can go up and down every coast. I mean, France, again, Europe. I mean, all these places will not be doing this. But, we're the ones who are okay, we're going to still have this something where, again, we have to pay attention to whether or not the agrarian cotton states have a say. It's no, that's kind of dumb. And it's also, again, that goes into the Senate too, but that's a topic for another day.
In that result, they also, in all of them, here's the findings they found in every scenario. There will be chaos both legally and politically. Trump will use all legal, and they use the term extra legal means. The fact that Trump and Barr are already calling for fraud and saying that there's going to be electoral fraud is setting up political, just disenfranchisement, misinformation. And
Well,
it's plain on arming his supporters.
Yeah, it's a gaslighting thing. Again, like they're basically just saying, okay, like again, we already expect something bad's going to happen, and then all these people who are already paranoid about globalism, Bill Gates, whatever, George Soros, conspiracy theory of the day, are already going to buy into this. So like they're setting up they're laying the groundwork basically. I think they all know that they're not going to win the election by fair means whatsoever. So they're going to be playing this out. I think that, remember these armed kind of groups that were going to the capitals in Midwest states when they were, it was kind of like a protest against COVID-19 measures.
Yes.
Especially in Michigan. I think that was a dry run, especially when it's connected to Betsy DeVos, who has connections with her either brother or brother-in-law, Eric Andrews, I want to say his name is. Mr. Blackwater. Again, like those are mercenary troops. Eric Prince, excuse me, not Eric Andrews. Eric Prince was, again, like the Blackwater CEO. She's connected with him. You have these weird groups come out. They were going to like take over state capitals. And then also in Portland recently, again, you found out that a lot of the those stormtroopers who were slapping people around and like hitting them with tear gas, they were not actually part of any official like federal police agency. They were basically Blackwater, revisited. They're private contractors. So again, like all that stuff this is dry runs.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, no, again, so these are all dry runs. So, these people are operating like this again, like, and they are already, I think in a way, Trump has already conceded the election by this kind of rhetoric. But again, they're going to fight tooth and nail, and they're just going to bet that either someone's going to cave, or again, they can generate enough of a crisis that Trump could stay in office. Because again, Trump is a cornered animal. He knows, I think, that a lot of things are going to come to light where he could possibly end up in jail if he's outside the presidency. And if not, his children will at the same time too. And a guy like this is not going to be dying in a jail cell. He was going to fight tooth and nail, and he's going to burn down as much crap as he can.
And that's absolutely what the studies found. And these were 100 nonpartisan, in the sense that they weren't partisan in the results. They were just playing it out, through like a war games exercise. And all experts, these are all like former party leaders, former, executive branch people. And all of them say like Trump is going to do all sorts of tactics. He's going to close down polling places. He's going to have people there to intimidate in polling places. He's going to get Attorney General Barr he's going to get the Attorney General to confiscate all the mail-in votes. Expect Republican governors to try to do that as well. And it's even possible in two of the scenarios. This scared the heck out of me. Republican governors will just send different delegates.
Yes, because again, like one of the things that people don't get pick up on the Constitution is that, from what I understand, is that state legislatures actually are the ones who appoint the means of who is going to actually go to electoral college. And so with that being said, they could actually just say like, oh, okay, well, like something happened with our vote here. So this is the delegation. This is going to be the legal one.
There is a term that you need to get ready to hear, everyone. Voting irregularities, which first of all, we have a massive mail-in voting and we have a global pandemic. So there are going to be voting irregularities. What does that exactly mean? It sounds way worse than it is, but they're going to throw out voting irregularities. That's going to be a Fox News. That's going to be a major word in Republican talking points. Voting irregularities to lessen confidence in people and with mail-in ballots. And the idea is if Trump can just hold on as long as he can without conceding, the thought is that they can just wear the public out with court case after court case, Trump will probably win if the mail-in ballots are not counted.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, again, like, they want to wear us out, and again, he will not concede. I think it's been said on multiple occasions by multiple people who know him. Because again, it's a corn animal situation. Again, like, if he loses, again, he doesn't have the means of avoiding jail time. They will probably try to put him in jail. He's pissed off enough people. I mean, like, part of it is, like, again, liberal do-gooders who want to make sure that, again, there's a proper government. We're going after him. There's state attorney generals who are part of the Democratic machine who want to gun him down. He's pissed off, like, the Clintons, the Bushes, and all that too. So part of it is, like, legitimate. Part of it is also, like, again, like, people have scores to settle with him.
Well, and Republicans will support this too, because while the Democrats are doing that, they will not be passing any legislation.
Yeah, because again, like, well, I mean, the Trump thing is, it's a weird political cult. I mean, like, more and more, like, I keep seeing this. Like, today I actually went out to a certain place, and, me and my wife were, like, sitting down having a nice outside lunch. Again, like, because, again, we don't trust anything inside, and, of course, there's nothing inside to actually eat. But anyway, that being said, there's a person walking around with a big Bowie knife on his belt, and also a red shirt saying "Keep America Great, vote Trump," which is hilarious because, again, I don't see anything great happening with the economy collapsing and, hundreds of thousands dead. But, that's just me. I guess my standard's a little bit too high.
What else is interesting and why I hate the two-party system? If Trump wins, it's because of Russia, and if Biden wins, it's because of China. Whoever has a victory is going to be delegitimized.
Yes, and it'll be delegitimized. Again, like I'm saying, like, actually, in some regards, I almost regard, like, a Biden win and victory would be actually almost somehow worse, because I feel like that caused a right-wing reaction, and that Biden it doesn't have the wherewithal to actually deal with this kind of stuff. I feel like it'd be a Hindenburg situation. You have this old person from the old order who is out to lunch and doesn't see that the country is swerving, and that if someone with enough brains and balls and complete lack of empathy for his fellow human beings, he can just swoop in and actually do some real damage. And, again, of course, I'm talking about, the big AH.
They say, obviously we know this, but I don't think the general public does. Election night will not give us a winner. They might, both sides will probably, Trump will probably claim victory, but it won't be legitimate without all the mail-in votes. And the longer that Trump can just stay in there without conceding defeat, the better his chances are to win. They say if he loses, he's going to just mass pardon allies. The other problem that people are going to have with this, and we both agree, Congress is completely spineless. Whoever is the Congress, I've never seen a Congress in my life that has done anything. There is no legal precedent for this and what's coming. And that's the interesting thing. Like, Trump's going to break a lot of rules, and he's going to be super ambiguous with the law. Congress is so spineless, they might not know what to do. They might just freeze, and they say it might even come down to, like, just Pence versus Pelosi's will. And I'll put my money on Mike Pence.
Because he's an ideologue, and, again, he'll keep pushing everything. I think you're right about that. Pelosi, I think it's just, she's a product of another age. I think that, and that's putting it kindly, I think, Pelosi kind of keeps thinking that, like, this is like the 1980s Republicans, where it's like, might be a few differences, but we can all kind of get along. And I think Biden, in a certain extent, is kind of the same way too, that all of a sudden we can just be all friends here, and, like, it's kind of like a friendly team sport, and, like, we can get a few victories for our side and blah, blah, blah. I don't think they realize, again, the Republican Party has been pretty much co-opted by this creature Trump to do mass nonsense, and that the partisans on the other side, again, this is not normal politics. This is cold civil war.
It sure is. And that's one of the main findings in the study that the Republicans said, where the Democrats were limited by being within the law and being moral. Whereas the Republicans were like, this is Trump, snap the fingers, let's go. We're going to do crazy things. they say, like, Rush Limbaugh will bring up China, 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 but they say, like, they're guessing like someone like Alex Jones will start doxing people who are important to the election decisions.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like, and there is a lot of people with guns and, these kind of half-assed militias who have been, were started growing in, like, I guess the Obama years, and they will be pressing. And again, I would totally expect them to show up at election counting centers. And, and there'll be people in this group. There'll be a lot of Democrats looking around confused because, again, like, you're playing checkers and these people are playing violent, ultra-violent chess and throwing the game board around, and they have no idea what to do here.
Well, one of the things they say is a possibility is in a polling area where it's very, it's African Americans, it's going to vote Democrat, that you're going to see Nazis come just to provoke fights so that they shut the polling place down. Yeah,
I believe that too. Again, it's just like, there was an ugly incident with a friend of mine, actually, very recently. They live in a certain community out in Orange County. And what happened is that they put out a Black Lives Matter flag, right? They put it on their front porch, basically. And someone showed up in full combat gear and had weapons on them and actually was asking pretty much, they said that they're knocking on the door and like ringing the doorbell constantly. Hold on a second. They're ringing the doorbell constantly because there was a light outside in one of the cars, and the person, the spouse, came out, and this person is white American, and asked what they were doing, and they said that there was a car light out, or a car light on, I should say, and they were going back and forth, and then finally the spouse went back inside. And basically said, like, okay, like, I don't know where this person's still hanging about and talking on their phone. They called the police, and the police had to show up for that. That was incident one. Again, very strange, and again, very, intimidation completely, I think, even though it was not said, nothing was clear about that, what happened there. And then a little bit later, the Black Lives Matter flag was actually torn down and is missing. And so again, they provided a police report. So that's just like the tiniest tip of the iceberg. There's going to be stuff like that happening. There's going to be these little intimidation efforts because there's a lot of the right who think that the Constitution is pretty much the Second Amendment, and that's all that matters.
No, you're right, and you know more about history than I do. I know like literally like maybe 2 sentences of the Compromise of 1877, but that's what they say this election is the most likely scenario is.
Well, that's a bad one because I know, like they say, election 1870. It was the 76 election. Person would take power in 77, but if that's the case, if we can just kind of go through a brief run through, that was Rutherford B. Hayes versus let me try to remember, Samuel Tilden.
I believe you are correct on that.
Yeah. So Samuel Tilden, I have no idea who that was. He was, again, a governor in New York, but he was a Democrat. And again, this is back in the old days when, the parties that were kind of reversed. So if you're a Republican, you're a liberal. If you're a Democrat, you're conservative, right?
Yes.
And so the Republicans had been on a winning streak from about 1860 because of Lincoln and also the Civil War. But anyway, Rutherford B. Hayes versus Tilden, and it pretty much looked like Tilden had won the popular vote, but there were still electoral college votes up in the air. And the spineless Republicans basically cut a deal with the Democrats, where basically they were saying, okay, we're going to pull all the federal troops out, and we're going to not really enforce civil rights anymore because, again, we want to have this presidency. We're going to ignore all the stuff that was happening in the South. So is that a good deal, guys? And the Democrats said, oh, hell yeah. That's absolutely fine with us because, again, we don't want these federal troops around to enforce civil rights and voting acts, which basically that killed Reconstruction. Again, and Reconstruction is one of the least understood periods of time where there was, after the Civil War, African Americans were actually being voted into office left and right, had full civil rights, and actually the protection of the federal government to actually use their civil rights. And in that 1876 election, the Republicans basically said, okay, we just want the presidency. After that, don't give a damn what happens to you guys. Enjoy the KKK.
Yeah. So that's what we're most likely looking at. And like I said, we said before, probably the compromise is the Electoral College in DC and Puerto Rico, which to me, once America sees new states coming, it makes our possibility of making it one less state. I'm sure the West Coast will be like, hey, listen, let's make it 50 states, and Cascadia, California will leave. But back to the scenario where Biden encourages us to be independent. What happens if Donald Trump says, fine, I don't want California in the U.S.? And what if California's like, hey, you know what? We're sick of this. Yeah, we'll get out. Should I be excited about that scenario, knowing that scenario will have will be the byproduct of mass riots and violence and anger? How should I feel about that, Forbes?
Well, I think to me is just that is a very realistic scenario, number one. First off, I don't think it'd be Trump encouragement so much, because I think Trump his ego will never allow that he will lose states. He doesn't want to go down as a president has lost California and the West Coast. For that's number one. He won't allow that to a certain degree. Number two, I think that when it comes to West Coast secession in that scenario, yes, there will be Republicans who are almost going to be gleeful over that. There'll be Democrats who won't be as much. The Democrats, I think, will think that they're cut off, and they will have a problem to a certain degree. But I don't know, maybe again, like Newsom would love to be like the president of a new country, right? Again, like that'd be a pretty much a real kind of thing to put on the resume, right? I mean, there's some elements of that. However, even if Trump was for that and actually allowed that to happen, again, that being said, if he allowed that to happen, that's basically saying that he puts his ego down a couple notches and says, like, yes, I'm the first president to lose states, which again, I don't think he actually would be. But at that same time, there will be forces in motion where parts of the United States government, the rump that's left, would be very irritated about that. Plus, also, there would be a lot of conservatives still left in the West Coast who I think would actually be ones willing to do violence to keep it in. I kind of always envision, again, this might get a little bit deep in the weeds of like political science and history, but there was the Troubles in Northern Ireland, right? And Northern Ireland is a province basically of the UK. Half the population wants to join the rest of Ireland. That's pretty much the Catholic population. The other half is unionist people, Protestants, who are very pro-UK, very pro-British. And they were at loggerheads, and, which is kind of a kind way to put it, they were doing assassinations, car bombings, mass shootings, kidnappings, whatever kind of like low-tier violence they could do. I mean, again, it wasn't Robert E. Lee marching through Virginia. This is a bunch of people who were basically, they devolved into two gangs. I think that if California and the West Coast was actually going to leave, there would be people inside the West Coast states who would be committing violence in order to try to keep it back inside the United States. Kind of like a reverse IRA, so to speak. Like the IRA was for joining the Irish Republic and forcing the rest of the population to do that. I feel like there would be, in Orange County, San Diego, some of the inland counties, where people would actually commit violence to try to keep the West Coast back in the United States. So yes, it would be kind of good for us because our goal is California independence and the West Coast being independent, but that will come at a price, and there will be attacks, and I have no doubt in my mind that there will be weirdos out there who could not accept that kind of outcome.
It's a lot of like I said, this episode was depressing to even just research and deal with. In every scenario, there's violence. Every increased violence than what we have now. The only one where it doesn't have guns is if Trump wins convincingly.
Joe Biden won convincingly. I thought that was the one was such a huge win. Like he's such a landslide.
I'm saying the only one without guns will be if Trump wins the Electoral College. Where it's a clear Electoral College victory. That is the only scenario where it won't be guns. But the election won't be determined. So there'll be guns and violence. The first day, I don't know if it was this. I think it said 11 days was what they thought would be like the real extreme violence for the first 11 days, which I don't know. I talked to my wife. I was like, we're going to buy a big bag of rice, get all the wine we can, and just wait this out.
Yeah, go to the bunker, basically. I don't blame any people who are doing that. I mean, I think it's just that there will be something there. I mean, and the West Coast seceding, I don't think it's so much like the Democratic heads will have a choice in that. I think that, I mean, I saw these protests up and down, in just like Los Angeles County for Black Lives Matter. If Trump looked like he stole the election or was forcing it, those elections are going to be bigger than ever. I mean, those elections already were multi-class, multiracial, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they were thinking that Trump really was doing it, that would just be bigger than hell. I mean, this is, it'd be on the level of what happened to the Baltic states in the Soviet Union. Baltic states, by the way, were the West Coast, kind of as an irony. That was the West Coast of the Soviet Union. And they all, when they saw what was going on in the Soviet Union and, even before the attempted coup in 91, which, basically kicked out Gorbachev in the long run, even though they didn't really win. Those West Coast states, they just left. They just got sick of it. They were done. And I feel like that could happen too. I mean, it's really hard to imagine the United States using troops to kind of keep the Union intact. I mean, actually, if we go back in time as a historical example, what if the Confederacy had never fired upon Fort Sumter? It would have really actually been impossible for Lincoln to really convince, I think, the rest of the Union that we have to pull in troops to actually put these people down.
It would have been. Absolutely.
Because, if they just sat on their laurels and just, and said, hey, we're independent. Okay, that stupid little fort you got in Charleston Harbor is your property, but we're not going to do shit about it. I don't know how Lincoln would have the capital. I mean, he probably would have talked a tough game, but it would have been, again, virtually impossible. But then they opened fire, and, all of a sudden the Northern States are like, wait a second, all these people, they're militias that they created because they're afraid of a slave revolt. They're all armed, and they opened fire on us. Where the hell are they going to keep going? Are they going to take over Washington, D.C., which, by the way, is not a commonly known Civil War thing? Yes, they were actually planning to take over D.C. and make that their capital. So, I mean, if they didn't have the wherewithal to actually, do that attack on a fort, I don't think Lincoln and, the North would actually be doing anything.
I think
border skirmishes, maybe.
I think Operation Anaconda still would have went forward with a blockade.
Yeah, but that's a very different thing. Rhodesia, which again is, in modern terms, Zimbabwe, they left the UK, and the UK, did their own sanctions and blockade, but really until the Bush War kicked off, which was basically the revolution to displace the white government, they were sitting high and mighty for a long time, a good probably, I think it was about 15 years really till the end. So again, and that was only because really, they only collapsed because again, finally, enough Soviet and Chinese arms went into the revolutionary groups. But if those revolutionary groups didn't exist, the UK's blockade was kind of didn't do that much.
And I guess we can end this this episode with this final depressing thought. No matter who wins, Congress will be just doing investigations. According to this group, they said if Biden wins, they're going to look into Trump tampering with the election to try to win it. And they will look into his criminal record. And if Trump wins, he's going to look into voter irregularity and try to make more voter suppression. Yeah.
Basically, what you're saying, Bill, is that this is even a stronger reason why California should probably get out, because if our alternative is this meaningless investigations, or, well, I guess, again, this is my partisanship to a certain extent. I don't think the Democrats are actually that off point. I think Republicans is make things out of thin air. I think Democrats actually have some more meat to chew on. But that being said, you want to really live in a republic where, again, it's a constant cold civil war where everything is like, okay, if this side wins, then we're going to do more investigations to screw this side. Like, nothing happens. There's no growth. Nothing is going forward. We're not talking about wages. We're not talking about housing. We're not talking about healthcare. We're talking about X, Y, and Z may have done something, so let's burn them to the ground, and that's pretty much our term.
Imagine what Fox News will do if it's a super majority where Democrats, or even let's say, they get the Senate is closer, they hold the House by a wider margin, and Biden's president, and this pandemic is still going on, and they are doing Trump election investigations. It's going to backfire. People will revolt on the streets, and justifiably so, because I care more about the economy right now than Trump's corruption. I would do the Gerald Ford move if I were president. I would just pardon him. Be like, we're not a third world country. We're not going to put our presidents in jail, and move forward. That would be the politically smart thing to do. But the Democrats won't do that. They will. Well, they're going to try to get Trump in jail. That's what that's what the liberals want. They don't want health care. They don't want environmental improvements or, getting rid of poverty. They want Orange Man bad in jail so that they can go on Twitter and Facebook and do na my team won, your team stinks, I'm number one.
I agree and disagree with you, Bill. I think
How dare you?
I know, because it's an ugly Saturday night. It's just gonna be. Again, this is how it's always gonna be. I'm just gonna be yelling. No. I think you're right and you're wrong. You're right in the sense that absolutely that they're gonna be this a victory dance on the corpse of Trump, right? And that there's no real address towards a lot of those major issues that we actually care about, right? That being said, the biggest screw up in American history was the fact that Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon. It really was, because I've heard this before. I think Ted Kennedy and his, I think he took over. It was like the Kennedy Center or something remember John F. Kennedy had those profiles in courage thing, right?
Yes.
And I think that if I remember this right, and again, please don't hold me to this, whoever's listening. I think Ted Kennedy pretty much nominated Gerald Ford as a profile in courage. That the fact that it was kind of like the narrative is that Gerald Ford had the balls to basically pardon Nixon so that we don't have to keep going through this national nightmare, right? That being said, that was the biggest nonsense ever, because the fact is that Nixon should have been nailed to the wall to prove to the American public that no one is above the law. And this has happened to other countries. Other presidents, other prime ministers have gone to jail. We didn't do that in this country because I think deep down, Americans were so silly about this that they really thought that, again, there's no way we can ever have a president in jail because it's America. If you're going to be a president, for some reason, again, God, the providence, whatever fate, put you in that position, and you couldn't be that bad. And I think that was our kind of almost our second original sin, at least the original sin of the later republic, was making sure that Nixon didn't go to actual jail. Nixon went to jail and he fried over this. Again, we wouldn't have Bush, we wouldn't have Reagan, we wouldn't have all these other people who pulled a lot of crap, because again, I think deep down everyone always thought that, you know what, worst comes to worst, guess what, the next guy coming in, he's going to make sure that we're not going to be actually in jail. And I think that's what happened. And I think that Trump, it's kind of almost banking on that as well. I think that, Trump always thinks that his get out of jail card is I'm going to resign the presidency at noon tomorrow. And then Pence is going to pardon him because, again, we have to move forward on this. And it's going to be just a recycling bunch of manure.
I'm going to go have a drink. I am super depressed, but I guess that was good information. And, the people said in this that, it's better to be prepared than surprised. So there you are. And we talked before, we're going to do an election night super show. I was even thinking of making it, I don't know if you drink or not. I assume you have some wobbly pops, but that we could make it a fun drinking game where, like, if Howie Hawkins gets 5% in any state, we have to, take a shot of something or.
Well, again, it's just, I do like actually having an alcoholic drink. I mean, this is, I don't know. I know you might be surprised about this, Bill. They might be shocked and, but yeah, again, I think we should totally do that. I'm always a whiskey fan, to be honest. So again, or actually, lately Armagnac, which I don't know if a lot of people got into that at all. That's basically.
Well, I know Artie Bucco was a fan of it.
Good Sopranos reference, my friend. It's like the French vodka.
I just one of my favorite scene with Janice there. I didn't want to strangle her. Was just like, oh, it's too syrupy. I don't want that. Bring us your most expensive wine.
Where's that like Tony's basically paying for the meal?
Well, but through Artie Bucco was going to pay for it because Tony never paid there. But it's just a good example of Janice's self-entitlement. Oh, she was the most evil character on the show.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's the show with Richie Aprile. I mean, again, that guy with his Manson lamps. I mean, the most evil stare in the history of stares. I mean, again, this guy would just put a bullet in anyone's head, did not care.
Who was your favorite Sopranos character? I have a guess, but I bet it's Polly Walnuts from what I've seen on your social media.
Polly is, it's pretty much my favorite because, again, between the shoelaces comments to, some of the asides and, plus the fact that, Tony Sirico in real life is this, it's such a gem. And
he apparently grabbed Jimi Hendrix's butt every time he went into a club that he was the bouncer at.
Did you listen to the Talking Sopranos podcast? Do you listen to that?
I listen to it now and again when it pops up on YouTube. I'm not consistent with it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because, they have Tony Sirico stories up the wazoo, which is just great. Steve Sherpa, who's the guy who played Bacala, talked about how he used to goof on him and always say that he had a better hotel room. And then Tony Sirico would just, burst in to try to figure that out. or the other one was the time Tony Sirico got in a fight with a waiter in Naples. When they did that episode when he went to Italy, Tony Sirico thought he was being discriminated against. Or how Tony Sirico would always order pina coladas no matter where he was at.
Well, on that note, I am really going to get a drink. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Free the Bear podcast. Thank you very much for listening. If you can, give it a thumbs up. Even if you didn't like it, give it that good old thumbs up and subscribe. I'm very old, but I've been told there is a bell that you're supposed to push or ding or something. So do that. For more information about the California National Party, go to californianational.party. Or on Twitter, vote_CNP. And in conclusion,
Free the bear. Grrr.
I'm going to make some growling noises.